know what Frankenstein monster of just mashing buttons got me here, but we're here, guys. My stream preview died, and that makes me sad. I still have you. Let me see if I go to YouTube. My cocoa audio should be on. Oh, she's happy here. She lives here now. She lives in my lap now. Oh, this is my baby girl. No, I don't want you to get on the computer, because if you get on the computer, then I'll have to... No. Let me see. Oh, audio is a go. Audio is a go. Ow. Ew. Coco, that hurt. The stream is behind me by a decent amount, but that's okay. That's okay. We got audio, we got visual. Everything's working out just fine. Ain't that right, BB? Ain't that right? Okay. So, really quick, give me like 2 seconds just to like post this on Instagram real quick, and then so that way the whole squadron knows we're around here. This is, you can't even see her that much. She's so cute. She is so cute. She's purring and she's happy, which means I can't move her. That's if you have a pet, you know that's the truth. She's scratching me, but that doesn't matter because she's happy. That's all that matters in my life, is making sure this cat is happy. Her and her 2 siblings. I have way too many pets. But I want more! Almost there, guys. Almost there. I'm so sorry. Speaking of which, let's talk about why I'm so late today. Okay, so what happened was we have been running out of groceries. And the only time we've had all week to go get more groceries before Friday, the only time we've had before Friday to go get groceries was today. Anything else would have had to have happened. God damn, this happens every time when I try and post stuff to my story on Instagram. It's so sad. But the only other time we would have had would have been if we tried to go Friday. But we need food, so we had to go grocery shopping. We had to go to 4 different grocery stores. I like angled this. I don't know if it's facing that way. It's better. We had to go to I think 3 or 4 different grocery stores, because some places had things that we need, other places that just didn't care, that kind of thing. One store around us carries decent fruit, and so we went around. We've been around. We left at 9 o'clock, but we walk everywhere. So we were walking around from 9 o'clock. We didn't get home until 12, and at that point, I'm anemic, and so I needed to eat something. So I sat down, I ate, and then I had to put on my makeup, wash my face. It's been a long morning, so that's why we're late today, but we are not lagging. Ain't that right, girl? She's so happy. I'm obsessed. So today we are talking about Patrick Melrose. It was a book I picked up specifically because Benedict Cumberbatch was on the cover. You need to calm down. You need to calm down. You need to calm down. Okay. But I got it because Benedict Cumberbatch was on the cover, and Benedict Cumberbatch and Tom Holland are my 2 boys. So I had to get it. I bought, what I have is actually, because Patrick Melrose is a series of 5 novels, and I bought just for $6 or so, one big thing that had all 5 books in it. And I just read the first one. I only read the first one today. We'll talk about how I felt about it in a second. Let's start off with 5 things that you should know about this book. So you have this guy David Melrose, he is abusive. Also, by the way, this is... By the way, this guy, sorry, there was like a warning on here. It's freaking me out. But this book is not family friendly at all, so be prepared. This guy, you've got David, it's not family friendly, and it is surprisingly topical. So you got David Melrose, who is abusive to his wife, Eleanor. 2, David rapes his wife, Eleanor, and that's how Patrick is conceived. Number 3, David Melrose is abusive to his son, Patrick. Number 4 is like this scene, and it's really the only she's falling. The only scene in the book that has any depth to it, and it is, you have Patrick, who is with his dad. His dad's like, oh, I'm gonna pick you up by the ears, which is a thing. I've seen this, where you pick up a kid by their ears, and then the kid braces themselves on your wrists, so that way all of the actual, because you're holding their ears to only, and lifting them with that, but actually all of their weight is just held in their hands on your wrist, braced, everyone's safe. Dad says, hey, let go of my wrists and I'll drop you at the same time. Patrick's like, okay, you're my dad, I love you, I'll do it. He does it, Dad doesn't let go, it hurts Patrick, it freaks him out, he's upset, he says, Jesus with the racers. Okay, but Patrick is upset, and he discusses it as if this is a thing his father regularly does. This is kind of a way that Patrick's father regularly treats him, and so he's upset. And when his dad actually does end up letting him go, he runs away. Patrick's dad then gets so upset that his son ran away and didn't let him continue to abuse him, that he calls Patrick upstairs to his bedroom, beats him, full on abusively beats him with a belt, and then rapes him. And then the 5th thing you need to know about this is that there are a lot of other characters in the book, but really they do not do anything. They are not relevant to what little story there is in this book. And that's the thing that I have an issue with in this book. That's the biggest issue that I have with this book, is that there's not much of a story being told. You are being told things. It's like if someone came up to you and told you every minute thing that they did in their day, starting from waking up, brushing their teeth, using the bathroom, wiping their butt, pulling pieces of bread out of the bag so they can spread some peanut butter and some jelly on it to make a sandwich. You're telling me a lot of things, but there's no story going on. And so this as well, just things are going on. You're telling me things, but they're not relevant to the little bit of story I get about Patrick and the abuse that he's going through. That's the only thing that's really happening. And from what I've read about it, it's supposed to be a look at these characters and a look at high-class British society, but the people that we are given throughout the story are so devoid of character, especially Anne and Victor. At first, Anne and Victor honestly don't stand out enough to the point where the first time I read their chapters, I was confused because I thought we were still talking about Eleanor and David. And then we have another couple, Bridget and Nicholas. Nicholas is just as useless as the other two. Bridget was interesting because she has kind of a rebellious thing going on. She's rebellious to this life, to this society. I think she's the American of the group. I don't know. It's really hard to keep track because none of them stand out. My cats are losing their mind. But none of these characters stand out. And I don't know if I touched on it later. Yeah. And so it's I cannot get invested in these characters when just nothing is interesting. Like, there's nothing interesting, there's nothing standout, there's nothing notable about these characters. Like, you had a philosopher character. I went to school for philosophy, and you still had a philosopher character that I had zero care about because he wasn't relevant, he wasn't important, he was like, half of these characters were a waste of my time. And as you guys know, if you've seen any of my other videos, any of my other streams on these books, one thing I do not stand for, one thing I do not like when I'm reading a book is having my time wasted. And that's the reason why, like, the only reason I would ever read any of the other books is because I don't feel like I read a full story. I don't feel like I read a full book when I read the first Patrick Melrose book, never mind. Yeah, that's it, never mind. I don't feel like I read a book, I don't feel like I read a full story. And it's the only reason I would want to read another one is so I can have some sort of closure with this character. Because I felt like I read an introductory paragraph to this story and to this boy's world, but that's not the case at all. Apparently that they thought that would suffice for a full novel, but it doesn't feel like it would. I feel like in order to have anything close to a full story, I would have to read all 5 of them. And this was apparent because I was a third of the way through the book, and I hadn't even gotten, I don't think I had even, no, I had met, you meet Patrick, I think, the 2nd or 3rd chapter. But I was a third of the way through the book, and nothing had happened yet. And at that point, I'm like, oh my god, this is one big novel that they decided to cut into 5 parts, probably to help sell the book more, because a lot of people aren't going to buy books that fucking big. And so it's really one big novel that they cut into 5 parts. None of those 5 parts feel... Wait. Stop. Sheesh. None of those 5 parts likely feel substantial. If any of these 5 parts are like this first one, they aren't substantial enough to actually stand on their own, but they choose to. And honestly, if these 5 parts are anything like this first part, you could cut out like 3/4 of that material and get just one book that actually focuses on the only dynamic character in this story. And let me really quickly explain static and dynamic characters. A static character is a character that goes through no form of change, no form of developing as a character, as a person. Who they are when you meet them is who they are when you close the book. That is a static character. Imagine like the growth of a human being. Imagine that being on like a graph chart. A static character is someone who just stays flat. Dynamic character is someone who goes through something, and maybe they as a person just fluctuate in how they act and behave and deal with things humanly. They experience things and they go through situations. A dynamic character is going to have conflicts in their life that they have to deal with, and maybe they get stronger, maybe they get weaker from it. That's a dynamic character. A dynamic character has substance to them and to the story that we are being told about them. And Patrick is the only dynamic character in this story, but unfortunately we spend like 10 to 15 pages with him of this 120 page story, and the rest of it really, if you took out all of the writing for all of the characters except for Patrick, Eleanor, and David, we would be fine. Hell, honestly, you could probably take out Eleanor's pages too and just have Patrick and David going back to back. That would be a full story, and that would be less painful than having to sit through all of this non-relevant, nonsensical nonsense that's around it. Because again, it felt like such a waste of time because it had nothing to do with the plot of the story. I know the author is trying to have some sort of just reflection on upper class Brits, but this is such a popular story. This is a popular story, and this is all an unpopular opinion that I have. I do not think that it is done well. I genuinely do not. It doesn't feel like a full story. It doesn't feel like you actually invest yourself in these characters enough for me to think about anything that they're saying, doing. Will you two? Oi! Nugget! Leave her alone. Stop it. No. Jesus, my children! It's fine, I need a drink break for a second anyway. My children are actually crazy. That's fine. Yeah. Oh no. Okay. Now that I've collected myself, and we've got a decent amount of time, we're only halfway through, and I've basically gone over a lot of the broader things that I need to say about the book. I kind of want to go over some smaller things that, like, I noticed that stood out to me while I was reading. So, one thing was, I'm heated. I'm very heated. One thing was a technique they are using to try and portray child's voice. And it's the issue is, one of the things is with it is that it's supposed to mimic a child, like, actually talking to you. So when a child is, like, if a child was trying to tell you a story, 9 out of 10 times they're going to be like, and then this happened, 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 and this happened. And so, to try and portray and to try and, like, emphasize a child's voice, a writer will oftentimes, like, have a section where they'll just, and then this happened, and then this happened. The only issue I have here is on the specific page. Do I have the book? I don't have the notebook over here with me. But let me grab the book so I can actually quote this for you. The children are acting crazy. But I didn't knock over a cat bowl. You knocked over a cat bowl. But my issue with it here is just that they did it too much to the point where it was actually genuinely just obnoxious to read. And that's the thing with writing. A lot of people, like, if you sit in a writer's workshop group, or if you're on, like, a writer's group on Facebook, there are going to be people who harass you about making sure that every single thing you write is realistic to the T. But honestly, most readers, like, half the time a reader doesn't care. Was it page 15? Am I wrong? Is it not this page? Half the time a reader, like, doesn't care. You're allowed to take creative liberties. And as long as if you're trying to portray something realistic, as long as you don't be super out there with your ideas, and as long as you have some grounding, some basis for your ideas, it's fine. And it honestly seems like more of something that, like, You're Worried CinemaSins or one of these Doctor Reacts to kind of YouTube channels is going to look back on and be like, that's not right. But really, that doesn't make it bad just because you made something up in fiction. It doesn't make it bad. The other thing is, when you're people tend to read and stuff like that to escape reality. So, like, you don't want things timed as they would be in reality, because that can get boring, and sometimes with something like this, it can get obnoxious and too much. Let me try and find this quote. Okay, here it is. I think this is what I'm talking about. So the quote is, he could remember standing on the snow by a stone bridge, and the road was covered in frost, and the fields were covered in snow, and the sky was shining, and the road and the hedges were blazing, and he had blue wooden gloves on, and his nanny held his hand, and they stood still for ages looking at the bridge. He used to think of that often in the time they were in the back of the car, and he had his head in her lap, and he looked up at her, and she smiled, and the sky behind her head was very wide and blue, and he had fallen asleep. Like, even that was just, it's young and youthful sentence structure, but reading that, like, that was like two or three sentences. That hurts to read. It's just a list of things not set up as a list, and it's just weird for my brain to read because maybe it's because I don't have a kid, and so I don't have to regularly think that when someone says "and in this," it's not close to the end of the sentence kind of thing. It just felt like it drags on for so long, that kind of sentence structure, and I appreciate nodding to it, but going off for paragraphs like that was just a lot for me. There was one sentence that, like, as I was reading it, it was weirdly worded. So the sentence is, it was on page 25 of the book. After less than a year together, they now slept in separate rooms because Victor's snoring and nothing else about him kept her awake at night. And in an American sense, because remember, whenever I'm like critiquing word structure, sentence structure, anything like that, it's from an English point. It's from the point of view of English diction, English vocabulary, dialect. And so that's where I'm coming from this. Granted, this is British English, so that's probably why there was confusion here, but I read this line and it made me think that the way reading it as an American, it was worded as if she was almost bitter that he didn't have something else that was keeping her up at night. My first thought was something sexual, of course, but then later when you get into the book, they seem to have no problem in that category. So it made me think almost, was this the book? I'm about to put you two away. Whew! My cats. Give me like 30 seconds to put a cat in the bathroom. Come here. You're knocking water everywhere. Come here. We only put one in the bathroom so they don't fight in there. Excuse them. I'm sorry. But, as I was saying, it sounds like it sounds like she's almost bitter that there wasn't something else he was doing that was keeping her up. And so I almost think that this may have been the book's way of saying, like, oh, he's not, like, it's only his snoring that's keeping her up at night. He's not, like, abusive. She's not scared of him, anything like that. That's, after, like, having read through the whole thing, that's what I think that's actually supposed to be pointing to. But it's oddly worded for me. It's very oddly worded for me as an American. Is one. Here's some other lines that I specifically pointed out. One of which was how nearly inevitable it is for those who have been terrified to become terrifying. And that feels like the most blatant foreshadowing, and to not have that follow through in any form is just irritating and frustrating. But I digress. And another thing I noted was, so of course, along with the story, you're showing all of these English people being all high class and whatnot. And part of that for them is that they are regularly like telling stories and talking about each other, and this frustrated me because you have these two characters are telling a story, both of them are laughing, both of them are enjoying it, and then the narrator basically looks out and tells the reader, oh, you had to have been there to laugh. Then why is this here? It would have been one thing if it was like a character in the scene, one character telling another character, oh, you had to have been there. But the narrator told me I had to have been there to find this funny. Well, obviously, this isn't a scene that happened in the book, so obviously I wasn't there. So then why, I'm not going to find it funny, why did I need to be involved in that specific story? That's one of the things that felt like such a waste of time when it came to all of anything having to do with characters outside of Patrick. It was, because the story is so bloated with unnecessary stuff, and that for them to point it out as like, you have no idea what's going on, it's not for you, it's for the characters in the book. But like, the book should be for the reader, yeah? Like, it just crosses the line to become just frustrating and infuriating. And then last couple lines were one of the most horrifying lines I've ever seen in media. It is, hi Coco. In the pursuit of knowledge, there was no point in killing the rabbit before one found out whether its eyes were allergic to shampoo or its skin inflamed by mascara. That was one of the most horrifying things I've ever read. And then the other was, do you believe in capital punishment? Not since it ceased to be a public occasion. That was something, David was the one who answered, not since it ceased to be a public occasion. And it just seems like someone like actively trying to make him seem like the worst character he could possibly be. And like, it doesn't even feel like he has more character than like most of the other adults in this story, but it seems like someone like picked the word unlikable, and that's his real only like personality trait, is just being as unlikable as possible. He's not like a jackass, he's not a smartass, he's just unlikable, and that's the most depth he gets. It seems almost like Eleanor was given the line of victim, and that there's depth in the fact that she does like medicate heavily, she does drink heavily, but aside from that, that's really all of the personality she gets for her. She used to be submissive, but when we're reading, she's not as submissive, and the rest of them were just high class snobs. But it's not even these characters are not in depth enough for me to really feel anything about them, I'm sure I'm supposed to feel hatred or annoyance or frustration towards those other characters, but none of them are important or fleshed out enough for me to care. And that's all I had to say about Patrick Melrose. I probably will not be reading this. Do not tell me that your battery is dead. I've been charging you all day. Okay. But that's probably all I have to I probably won't be reading the other books for a while. Maybe in a couple years I'll have gotten over it and be ready to try and read them again. But for right now, we are moving on to a different book. Again, I'm going to try and stick with... Ooh, cool. Cool. I'm going to try and work on... Oh my god, it's giving me settings. I'm sorry. I'm trying to work on books that I would like, eyes to word kind of books, because I have this time, the quarantine in my state has been extended through the end of May, so I have time to read them, and I will be reading for the next one. It is called Chosen by O.M. Fayul. I have been seeing this book in my recommendations forever. I got it for free off of Free Booksy. If you haven't tried Free Booksy and you like read books a lot, I definitely suggest it. I don't really open those emails right now because I for a while wasn't just getting enough time to actually read those books, and I just was filling my Amazon library with books I was getting for free, but had no time to read. But Free Booksy, I got this book. It seems super interesting. The cover of it is absolutely beautiful, so I can't wait to read it. We're excited. We are excited. If you want to be uber supportive of me, you can check out this book that I wrote. It is The Queen of Thieves, A New Throne. You can check it out here. The Queen of Thieves, A New Throne. This book is actually, you can pre-order it today. It is going to be available. It's going to be available, and you'll get your book tomorrow. So that's super exciting. I'm super excited for it. So you can do that. You can check this out if you want to support me even more. Then you can go ahead and check out my Patreon. That's going to be linked down below. I don't know how it's going to look because YouTube doesn't like me hitting the enter button anymore, so who knows. But Patreon over there, you guys get some cool stuff over there. I have another cat coming to me. They're losing their mind. But over there, they get the first chapter of my books for free. They get the videos, my videos early. I'm sorry. Look, they get my videos early. In fact, after this, I'm going to be posting a new book, a new video over onto my Patreon, so they get to see it a week early, and then we get to just hang out. It's great. It helps me out a lot, and I really appreciate it when you guys do support over on Patreon. That's Chestnut. I'm in his way. That's Chestnut. But you have that as well, and then if you want to watch me stream more, I'm actually starting Twitch. I've been doing some like work with me style streams on Twitch, No Ordinary Scholar again. So you can do that as well. And if you just want to hang out with me on a more spontaneous basis, you can check me out on Instagram. It is Firestorm2343, Tormenta de Fuego 2343. You can check out either of them, or you can check out both, whichever you prefer. But that is all. You want to say goodbye? Goodbye. Mm-hmm.